Okay, so you've got a recording. Oh, there is an option. Okay, great, wonderful.
I've got a recording. If you want to do it too, that's fine. But whatever.
Yeah, no. If you got it, I'll post it. Okay, so yeah, just I'll give a little bit of introductory context. I think a lot about the pipeline from idea to reality, particularly because I've seen so many of these biohacking projects where they have really great ideas and maybe it works in one or two people or some animals, and then it goes nowhere. And there's nearly an infinite number of reasons why it goes nowhere, but you can largely say it's coordination problems or really an epistemics problem, like knowledge. But if everyone knew that it worked and that it was good, the market would be there. But because there's issues surrounding just that process of how do we come to know that something is good or something is useful, a lot of things just never go anywhere, especially because as people say, it's like hundreds of millions of dollars to bring something to market under the FDA's regulatory paradigms, and therefore a lot of things are just simply never going to happen in the existing regime. And instead, what we end up having is truth by podcaster, which isn't really a great solution, but it's what's sort of prevailing in these markets that aren't regulated, like nootropics, like peptides, and so on. So um, with that, I'd like to I'll hand it off to you, Mike, as a context for how do we start coordinating around ideas, and how do we start having people sort of prove or at least argue in a way that is more tangible than just people yelling at each other on forum threads.
Sure. I can we can go into that little philosophy rabbit hole. Do you want to start there? Do you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, let's unfold, unpack.
Okay. So I love the way you put the information environment right now, where it's like truth by podcaster. I think that's 100% accurate. Um, and what has changed in the internet age, in addition to obviously the access to all the information that we have, is the severe loss of trust. The severe change in the centralization of trust has been just absolutely blown open, and um, and I'm on a call that's being recorded, but we're okay. Um, the establishing facts and then kind of imposing them on populations model isn't going to work anymore, no matter how good the facts are, because trust isn't there. You kind of need trust to elevate a conjecture into a fact, into a piece of common knowledge. And so, what Ideamarket is doing is building a tool to find consensus on who to trust instead of on what's true. Um, and we can iterate on that, but basically we have to trust people in common before we can have any truth in common, before we can have any information in common. And the way we're doing that is by embracing the truth by podcaster environment that we're in right now. And what I mean by that is uh, Ideamarket is kind of like a social network where you can make little posts, kind of like Twitter, and everyone is invited to rate each post to signify agreement or disagreement. You can agree or disagree on a scale of 1 to 100. So below 50 is I disagree with this post, above 50 is I agree with this post, and you can kind of show your confidence level. And what this does is if you have some kind of uh, truth that you're trying to establish in a common knowledge kind of way, in a consensus kind of way, instead of waiting around for CNN or the FDA or the Lancet or the WHO or the CDC or whatever agency would have jurisdiction over you to cooperate and approve of you and give you that legitimacy that they can. You can crowdsource credibility by getting a bunch of credible people in your field or even out of your field to express support, to say that they agree with whatever you've posted. And so instead of pointing to CNN and saying, see, they think my new treatment idea is plausible, you can instead point to a list of experts who have put their reputations on the line to say, hey, look at all these people who think that my treatment idea is plausible. And so that while that does not constitute scientific practice, what it does is it builds trust and accelerates the process of uh, pooling a lot of trust and credibility all in one place, so that then you can take next steps like apply for grants, get funding to do research or build products, get licensing and things like that. It accelerates the trust building process, kind of starting from zero. So you don't need to really have institutional connections. You really only need a list of influential people who can be the initial people to stand by you, and it'll make them look good if it turns out that they were right because they were right on something really early. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll just add that the current system, besides podcasters, is largely grants making agencies, and those administrators are very risk adverse. And then you have the pharmaceutical venture capitalists who are always just going to be very focused on how do we turn this into a profit, and that also leaves a huge blind spot. But yes, please continue.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
hi, Mike.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah,
Thanks
hey,
for having me. It's a pleasure. Sorry to interrupt. But, um, yeah, it would be. Do you know if there's been any similar experiments of this nature in the past, or
there
what the closest ones are?
There hasn't been anything quite like this that I know of. I mean, the idea of petitions is as old as time, but on-chain petitions where there's a public track record of personal judgments, time-stamped, I don't
Mm,
believe that's been done. The emphasis has tended to be on like data collection and verification rather than recording of subjective judgment, recording of personal opinion, and creating a track record for that. Um, there have also been discussions of, I don't know if they exist, they may, of DAOs getting a bunch of credible people together and certifying something or attesting to something as a group, as a DAO. But I haven't seen that play out. It doesn't mean it hasn't. I don't know of any examples. But yeah, the idea of crowdsourcing credibility is kind of new, is kind of new, and I didn't invent it, but um, I haven't heard of a lot of experiments in this area.
it's kind of similar to the way that efficacy testing was done prior to 1972, when the American Medical Association would aggregate, like, basically efficacy studies were the aggregate of the 144,000 members of the American Medical Association in terms of their aggregated case reports from individual patients who were willing to try an experimental treatment. And then the doctor would record the outcomes. And then, like, a wide array of effectiveness and side effects were reported, as opposed to currently where you have to have psychic powers to predict, like, the optimal endpoint for a particular condition. There was one company who developed, like, the first effective treatment that reduced deaths from prostate cancer, and they did that, like, in around 2009, I think. And when they were filling out their forms for their clinical trials, they did not specify, like, mortality or death as an endpoint. So their application was rejected because they had, like, tumor size or something. And so they had to, like, redo their trials, and they went bankrupt in the process after years of that. So I can't remember why I started talking about that. Oh yeah. So it would be great if we could, yeah, especially, like, using doctors, because they currently prescribe a ton of medications off label for conditions that they have not been FDA approved for. And in a lot of cases, they're prescribed more often off label for the off label usages than for the actual FDA approved usage. So it'd be great if we had, and there's, like, no large scale long term data about this. And also, so I think that's an awesome thing that you can do. And then there's one other thing I wanted to ask about. If you, like, so you do you have an algorithm that weights the opinions of people based on their previous accuracy rate?
What we are focused on is making sure to respect the subjective opinion of the people whose trust we want to earn. So if we're creating an algorithm and then imposing it, we're kind of just becoming another authority for people to say, well, I don't agree with their algorithm. So what we're doing instead is keeping track of all the data, making sure all the data is public and on chain. And then you can use whatever set of criteria or algorithm you want to decide who deserves trust. And accuracy of claims or accuracy of predictions, that's also going to be subjective.
So
Yeah.
do you plan on, so you just want to be a unbiased, algorithmic or otherwise, arbiter and aggregator of the data. So do you plan to make it available via an API for people who do want to analyze it and are willing to apply
And
those
we need to analyze it too. I just want to be specific that we're not going to try to make any decisions about what is important or what counts or what any final results are on anyone else's behalf. We want to be the place where opinions get recorded, not where opinions are made official, not where opinions are imposed. Because without trust, that's just not going to work anymore. So we have to make sure to be convincingly unbiased with respect to opinion. Yeah.
Cool. And so if one did want to analyze the data, would they use like the graph protocol or something, or like an actual like Web 2 API?
Yeah, the graph protocol. We've built a couple subgraphs, and that should work. I'm a non-technical founder, so my precision on the details of how exactly it would work might be a little off. But yes, something like building or querying a subgraph. All the data is on chain, so you could also just, I suppose, export it or download it into a centralized database to make it easier to manipulate, and then have APIs from there. Yeah, we absolutely want that whole analytics layer, filtering, slicing, and dicing to be used, to be exploited and experimented with.
Cool.
Yeah, let me just recontextualize this a little bit. There's a lot of talk about having a web of trust or some sort of meaningful reputation system, and it seems like that will be one of the things that falls out of Web3 of these emerging technologies. But I think it's two points. First off, is that it seems like it is going to come down to different algorithms are looking at the same set of data, and then they're making decisions. So that, for instance, my filter for whether or not to trust this person depends on what I think is important, or perhaps what my friends think is important. And so when I go to say, should I do business with this person? Should I trust this person's opinion? It could vary widely depending upon what algorithm I'm using to determine that. And then secondly, I think part of the problem is that it's such a network effect where people have been trying to make some sort of graph of reputation, some sort of web of trust, but until there is an actual reason for people to be using it, it's hard to scale it to a level that people are actually going to use it. So I'm hoping that biopharmaceutical discovery is perhaps that first thing that is both highly open to being used for this method, but then also is potentially profitable as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think they spend about $60 billion a year on purchasing anonymized health records from EHR systems like Epic and Cerner. So there's a lot of money being spent on kind of exploration in that sense. And it seems like this would be radically cheaper than that. And so I'm sorry, did I miss a like a demo or a walkthrough of
No, you're just in time.
Great.
Yeah, I can do one right now. Let's see. I hope I can share the screen and record at the same time. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah. Is that working?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Oh, nice. All right. So the way this works is on the left, the blue item is the post. And actually, the blue and the green and the red are all posts, but they're in different contexts. So you have the post on the left. It's a simple statement. It's an NFT, and you can agree or disagree with it. And you can also, when you give a rating, you can also cite other posts in order to explain the reasoning for your rating. And the top ones show up here in citations. And then on the right, you have the ratings given by the top users on Ideamarket, and how the top users are decided I can explain a little later. But I just wanted to introduce you to the UI here. The home page basically shows all these snapshots of how statements are being evaluated. You have what the top people think about it, and you have the top reasons that people think what they think about it, all in this little snapshot. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yep.
So in a DeSci context, well, I guess I'll also drill down a little bit here, because when you click into a post on the left, it gives you the full list of opinions that have been recorded for it. This is, what each user says. Explorator rated this a 1, and he gave this reason. And if there are multiple reasons, then you can cycle through with these little arrows. And so you have like this on-chain credibility petition. If you have a scientific discovery, you get all the reviews in right here, all the opinions in right here. So if you get a bunch of high-profile people, even if they're not necessarily scientists, and maybe you shouldn't believe them about whether something is true, it might be worth believing them as to whether something is plausible or whether something deserves investment. These are still relevant questions to take DeSci projects to the next level. So you get the whole list right here under the ratings tab of an individual post. And then on the all arguments tab, you see the top reasons that people gave, the citations that people gave for their opinions, and then the reasons for those as well, and the top people who said something about each reason. So this is really a social network in the front and a knowledge graph in the back. It links all the posts together so that you can explore the argument tree in whatever direction that you want to take it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. This could be useful for DeSci in the sense that scientific findings might have material impacts on public debates about a variety of topics. And so a DeSci paper post, a DeSci discovery post could end up being cited by all these completely unscientific or political debates and get a lot of attention and ratings for the DeSci posts. So a post becomes, networked into a conversation. So any questions at there right now?
I had a question about the issue of in crowdsourcing. So there's lots of rules for what can make it effective or ineffective. Like it's particularly ineffective in the case of our political system at selecting the best person in the United States out of the 300 million people to run the country. So due to the copycat phenomenon where people just there's the I already kind of I don't know, is anybody gonna watch this? I think I already mentioned the analogy to you, but
yeah, please. I don't remember, but
it's like these army ants. There's these army ants that will navigate by following the pheromones of the army ants in front of them. So when they're trying to get home, they'll all be following in a line. If somehow the guy in the front's like an idiot and he turns right and then keeps curving around, then he may end up following the last ant in the line, and then they will walk in a circle forever until they die of thirst and starvation.
Yeah.
And so it's a very good analogy for our political system and crowdsourcing generally. And it requires, according to the book The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki, which is a great book, like one of like the 6 rules is that all the individuals participating in the decision have to be deciding as independently as possible, as opposed to having their decisions like influenced by others. And their results are much more accurate. The aggregate results are far more accurate whenever all of the independent actors are independently coming to their conclusion. Thus, it seems like it would be cool if you couldn't see anyone else's ratings until you selected your own rating in your user interface. Have you considered this?
Yeah, we have considered it. Um, and in terms of getting like perfectly honest ratings, I think you're right that that would make the ratings more honest if people weren't influenced by, what groups have said before them, what influencers have said before them. I do think it would clarify the signal on a individual level of granularity of resolution. Um, However, for my hypothesis about this is that I'm not incredibly concerned about ant vortexes at this point because for two reasons. One is if you're wrong in hindsight, everyone is going to be happy to capitalize on that by being right by comparison and contradicting you. So
Mhm.
the opinions are on chain. So if you were totally wrong in hindsight, that's bad for you and good for someone else. And there's a market for being the one who's right while everyone else is wrong. So there's I think that's going to happen naturally. And the other is we are served by the truth by podcaster effect in this case, which because our group allegiances have basically never been more diverse than they are now.
Mhm.
So it seems like a certain level of uniformity is required for that to happen. So as long as everybody in the world doesn't get sucked into an ant vortex at the same time, um, there should be we should be safe from that phenomenon at some point.
Right. But if they do there's many like positions that are common among like the Republican Party now, for instance, that like very anti-immigration sentiments and things that were uncommon about 30 years ago. It used to be more like Ronald Reagan encouraged immigration and like there's lots of Republicans that supported it then because that was just the position of their party. And so, and then like the Iraq war used to be popular under Republicans and unpopular under Democrats until Obama was president, and then it reversed. So if they can see, like for instance, if my dad watches Fox all the time, if he could see someone like a Republican that he knew's opinion on the side there, then he would just like default to that, and then his independent thought would like terminate. It would basically just be a copy and then add weight to the Republican view, not based on his independent judgment, but just based on the fact that he saw like Tucker Carlson had a tweet that had some perspective,
Yeah,
and then so their people's brain, like you have much far fewer calories being expended on thinking through the logic of the thing, and then and humans are inherently lazy since we grew up in a time evolved in a time of scarcity, so they like to preserve calories. So you can do that by just like copying someone else's thing instead of like going through a whole thought process and critical about yourself, you know.
yeah, and we should. It's very efficient. It's not efficient to have everyone figuring out everything for themselves. It's completely necessary that we trust other people in order to generate opinions for us sometimes, often. Um, and given that's how we're inevitably going to work, I think we need like a kind of conversation that works with that instead of tries to squash it into conformity. Yeah. So like another I may have forgotten exactly which part of that I wanted to respond to.
Um,
You're yeah. Go ahead.
so if it works, I think we should try to overcome it. So, what do you think, Tristan?
I think that if there starts to become some sort of reputational or financial value in being proven right eventually, then even if a bunch of people bandwagon incorrectly in the first period of time, that then creates even more of an incentive to be right and to prove that you're right later. It is hard with opinions. It's more practical with scientific questions, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does offset. Yeah, it definitely does offset the other problem of there's like what's that called? Discordant um, cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
So there's also like even if they would think that correctly, like logically think through a particular claim, and it would be contradictory to what their tribe thinks, that induces cognitive dissonance in their mind, which is unpleasant. And so it's really a spectrum. So, like you're saying, there's the financial or other reputational benefit to being right, and if your tribe is wrong, but there's still like just it's math. How much pleasure and is derived from that relative. It has to exceed the displeasure resulting from cognitive dissonance and from the cognitive effort of having to think through a claim from basic principles, as opposed to just taking a shortcut of copying what people think. So, yes, I think if you should try to weight it in the direction of independent thought as much as one could. But we could also just do an A/B test and have an experiment, and you could have two interfaces, maybe like some kind of provable um, fact. That's another thing that you can do with crowdsourcing. Instead of just like but you don't want to be the arbiter. But if you did want to kind of weight opinions based upon knowledge, then you could also have some questions that can be verifiably false or true, and then that are relevant to the topic, and then weight their opinions based upon their knowledge of factual information, if you believe there are such things as facts.
Yeah, I like one way that we could potentially do that is use a selection of people's opinion as the oracle. So
Mm.
instead of so basically we would say, uh, according to this person or this group of people, um, they will decide collectively that this is true by this date. They will have this opinion about this topic by this date, true or false. And if you trust their opinion, if they're extremely good verifiers, if you're in a dispute with someone and they trust the same people, that could totally be one way to execute that, without having to build anything new.
Right. But how do you know if they're a good verifier?
You trust them. Maybe you trust them for their credentials. Maybe you trust them for their past results. Maybe you trust them because of the rigor of their previous work. But for
Hopefully,
whatever reason, you trust. Yeah.
you'll probably trust them because of how attractive they are, and how well spoken and persuasive they are in communicating
Sure.
too.
But if you wanted to design a contest like this, you could choose them for any scientifically virtuous reason that most speaks to you.
Huh. What? So if you make one, then you can decide who the verifiers are. Can you show that to me on the in the
Yeah,
website?
that's
Or
that's not really built in. The way we would do it is it's a way of filtering the data that already exists. The filter is not built yet, but it could easily be done with the data that exists. Um, it could be like if you want to judge the outcome of a post based on certain people's opinion, what you might do is you could either filter the data from them directly and just say, give me the data from these 3 people, or you could give them an NFT and say, what are the results based on the group opinion of the holders of this NFT, the collective holders of this NFT, and then filter it that way. So that hasn't been built into our product, but it's something that could be done with an API fairly easily.
Can you can you add people to the NFT? Does everybody get like one NFT they get to give to like the smartest people they know or something?
I mean, we don't have a specific NFT for segmenting audiences. Maybe we should, but you could also do this with Bored Ape holders or with Milady holders or any existing NFT, because what segregates audiences in that respect is what's in their wallets. That's an on-chain criterion that you could use from something that exists or create something new to use it.
That's cool.
I think we're starting to see people who are consistently winning in manifold markets and other prediction markets are being elevated as being, oh, they're really smart or really brilliant. So if you take that reputation and then apply it to these more opinion-oriented ones, I think you can potentially get some meaningful signal.
How is that implemented yet? Like, can you filter? Do you have some filtering functionality? Like,
we've only done a little bit of that, and here's how we've done it. On the profile page, the first thing you see is similar users, and what it does is it filters users by how many posts you've both rated, and then gives you a percentage showing in how much alignment you are across all of those. So Siamese Greg and I, for example, have rated 23 of the same posts, and we differ an average of 7 points on that scale over 23. That's pretty high agreement in general. Does that make sense?
Is your Siamese twin?
Yeah, I guess so. And it's funny because I've one of my best friends IRL, his name is Greg, but it's probably the same person. But in any case, like we're demonstrating the filtering capability first by introducing users to each other based on common belief and like doing this in a very precise way, self-proclaimed common belief. So that's the first filtering analysis type tool that we've built. But there's an infinitude more yet to do.
Cool. That is awesome.
I'm really glad.
Again, this is just the start of the web of trust, and ideally, if you can pull in from different platforms, whether it be like manifold markets or this one, and then see. I guess a question, just a conversation question is, for dating apps, would this be good if someone has high agreement with you, or are you going to end up with autistic children if you're both in agreement?
I think on your preference, you could definitely filter people by agreement with you, or you could filter people by disagreement with you. It kind of depends on how the end user behaves. But yes, I would love to use this as a dating app. You could easily have a post that says, I am male, and another one saying, I am looking for a wife, and filter everyone who agrees with both of these and then show me all their top opinions.
Whoa. We'll definitely get you some traffic.
Right.
Yeah. I think what I want to do is launch that on April 1st and have it actually not be a joke.
Yeah. You're definitely should.
But yeah, that's a wonderful use case.
I'd like to maybe direct the conversation to maybe how to integrate both of your guys' platforms, but
Yes.
maybe Mike, if you could just give an elevator pitch for people who are watching this video and aren't already familiar.
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing mine.
Oh, okay. Next. Let me see here. Yeah, so it's all screwed up, and took a bunch of drugs and it's still miserable. So I started trying to identify the root causes of a bunch of autoimmune kind of conditions I had. And so I just collected a ton of data in lots of different apps and then analyzed it using pharmacokinetic modeling and some other kind of causal inference algorithms to identify what the effects were of like everything that I ate and drank and all the drugs I took. And then so analyzed the data and discovered that what the most significant factors, like more significant than many drugs I'd taken, were like lectin intake and gluten intake after about a 2-day onset delay, and then the effects lasted about 10 days. So I could stop eating gluten or lectin for a couple days, and then there would be like no improvement, or I could eat it after not having eaten it for a while, and I wouldn't see any effect for a few days. So that's why I was able to go through my like decades without realizing. That's why I wanted to be dead all the time. So anyway, I tried to make it as easy as possible for anybody. Like there's about 1 billion people with autoimmune diseases and mental illnesses, which are shown to be more and more influenced by like neuroinflammation and the immune system, and by extension our diet and lots of other factors in our life. So I tried to make it easy for people to record their symptoms and treatments and stuff like that, and then import them from a bunch of different sources like on air quality and exercise and sleep and diet, and from a lot of different apps and devices, and then analyze it using that kind of temporal delays and causal inference stuff to generate a lot of studies, and ultimately like kind of these root cause analyses. So if you have depression, you can or look up overall mood and then see what the typical change from baseline is for a lot of different drugs and whatever you want, and then see the typical change from baseline and predictive power based on like Hill's 6 criteria for causality. And so we got data from, so in the app, you can see just like N of 1 studies based on your own data and your typical change from baseline. So I'm very guilty a lot because I'm a horrible person. But I'm typically 11% less guilty after above average exercise over the previous 7 days. And then we take all of these individual N of 1 studies and then aggregate them at this Journal of Citizen Science thing where you can search for an outcome that you're trying to improve, such as inflammatory pain or arthritis or overall mood, and then basically see the averages for everyone. And ultimately, so our goal is to reward people. It's currently like kind of arduous to record all of your symptoms and everything every day because a lot of this stuff cannot be automated yet, like self-reported pain and stuff. So and then there's also difficulties in privacy risks. So that kind of have prevented previous like central aggregation, health aggregation platforms from being successful, such as Google Health and Microsoft Health Vault. I'm probably talking too long. You can use a cane and pull me off as soon as is necessary. But anyway, I just made all these damn studies, and I think it would be awesome to validate or try to provide support for their causal plausibility or not, using the IDEA platform, so that people could because there are algorithms that I was able to develop to apply a number of different Hill criteria for causality, but the plausibility is one that is not prone to easily automating. So I think crowdsourcing would be the kind of most effective way to do that. So it's you want to figure out if there's kind of a biochemical mechanism of action by which some given factor, such as Diet Coke intake, could affect overall mood. So if you go to here, theoretically, to load the study, And then currently, I just kind of have a simple like voting buttons, whether people can vote whether or not they feel it is possible that Diet Coke could affect inflammatory pain in this case. So it'd be, I think it would be cooler if people had a range, and if we could get um, more cognitive surplus applied to uh, um, evaluating the likely accuracy of lots of these different studies, because we have like tens of thousands of them, and the statistical power is not fantastic at this point. That's another reason why we're creating this CureDAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization that is owned for the most part by the individual data owners and creators, and then secondarily by the 350,000 data silos that currently exist, because there's currently a prisoner's dilemma that prevents them from making it easy for people to share their data. But if they were joint owners in a DAO, and they would all benefit from the multiplicative value of aggregated data relative, as opposed to the relatively useless like timeline descriptive statistics that are possible that we have today, because it's all siloed. We could ideally have these outcome labels for every food and drug and nutritional supplement in the world that say specifically what the change in symptom severity is for the average person, if you take melatonin for in this case, and then eventually with enough data segmented by people's microbiome and genetic profile and stuff, so you can get more personalized information without having to record it all yourself and create your own studies. So I probably talked too long.
Okay, that's perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So I love this. Let's go back to this metaphor of like the funnel, right? Of like all of this noise, of these competing opinions, and then how to narrow it down to get to the point where there's some amount of solidity, agreement. But I love the idea of yeah, like right here, this seems right, seems coincidental. If there was perhaps you could either automate it so that when there's a bunch of conflicting opinions on that, then it gets kicked to the idea market, or if someone's just like, this is important to me, I'm going to stake a little bit of Arbitrum or whatever currency in order to launch a debate on this other platform to try to get some more eyes on it. And then potentially, yeah, if there's a lot of competition still on idea markets, then perhaps there could be enough of a motivation for people to start doing actual primary research. But so what would that look like, Mike? Just from like to kick off a new idea market poll, does someone have to spend some of the IMO token or Arbitrum or?
Yeah, you don't need IMO to make a new post. You need a little bit of Ethereum on Arbitrum, AETH, and that's easy to bridge over if you have Ethereum on mainnet already. I can show you how to do that in a moment. But basically, it would look, the process would look something like this. And I'll just share my screen again and demonstrate. All right, are we back? Cool.
Yep.
All right. So you would go up to new post and you'd say something like something that you pull from your studies. I'm just going to go with a crackpot thing that I read about. Antineoplaston cures cancer. And you like give the big headline in this kind of very simple format. And then beneath you would post the link to the science, to the study on it, curedao.org/study.html or whatever the website is, and include that. And then you'll tag it DeSci so that's easy to find. And just for relevance, I'll also tag this health and science as well. And hit post, and you'll confirm in MetaMask. It should cost maybe like 15 cents of gas and then plus 1/1000th of an ETH to post. That's about $1.30 right now per post. And then it'll complete in a few seconds here. There we go. And now I can find it here on new. There it is. And now to give the first rating, I'll just start with the first one, like maybe 60, and I can create a new post in order to like provide a reason for my rating, but I'll just rate it by itself for now. So the first rating will be 60. Rating a post also costs the same, the small gas fee plus the 1,000th of an ETH, about $1.30 right now. And you wait for the rating to clear. And now we have me here with my rating. The average is put on the post in green. That's just a simple average. There's no algorithms involved, and it's not, decisively true or false. It's just kind of giving you a sense of where the trend is at the moment. And as other people rate it, when you click into the post, you will see everyone's rating, and you'll see what each person said about this particular post. And if you have a study that you suspect might be high impact and might have, some plausible early results, you can make it as a post like this. You can invite the members of CureDAO to rate the post so that a kind of initial list of raters is established and kind of get a baseline to start with. And from there, if you can get some more influential people to rate it, or some people whose opinions are respected by, venture capitalists or grant foundations, or whoever's approval or cooperation you're looking to get at an institutional or financial level. You build up that list of people on here. They can see right on the website that they think is plausible, that they think there's something real there that is worth pursuit. And if they want to go into greater detail, then they can make other posts as well to cite. So for example, I could make a new post and say something like, and I just have to get his name right. In 1986, Dr. Brzezinski brought 40 cured cancer patients to the medical world. And this is science, this is health. It's not really SciDAO. And confirm that. And then what you can do is, once that goes through, then when people rate this post, they can cite the existing post. They can find it, and they say, search to cite Dr. Brzezinski. There it is. Cite it for, add citation, hit rate, confirm the transaction.
How do you win again?
I'm sorry?
How do you win again?
How do you win?
Yeah.
Hindsight and history justify you. What happens when you win is, in the future, people go back and say, hey, they query the database of opinions and say, show me all the people who were right about this at time T. And then your name shows up on that list.
Right. How is right defined?
Personal opinion. It's whatever opinions.
Majority wins.
There's not really a winning. There's not really a settling. This is here to record opinions and timestamp them so that we can see whose judgment was good in hindsight. But it's not to say you have won this bet. This is over. You win money. There's not any financial risk being thrown around here at all. It's really purely reputational stake. All right. So just to demonstrate that citation real quick, here's the new post. And here I've rated the post and cited that. And now you can kind of see how the argument builds itself out. And in the meantime, since I've rated this post twice, I've paid 2 rating fees, $2.67 right there, to the owner, author of the post. And so if you're making posts from a DAO-owned wallet, however many posts you can get from the wider world produce an income stream for the DAO. And,
Cool.
yep, and I can withdraw that right here. So at the top, there's this available to withdraw button, and you can just hit that and confirm the transaction. It'll send all the money right to the wallet.
So it is in the financial interest of the poster to be very controversial.
Yes.
Money either direction that you go, right?
Yeah, it's in. I would say so. Yeah, it's in the interest to get a lot of ratings, and controversy does tend to be good at that. So yeah, it's really designed to capture and encourage major breakthroughs and paradigm shifts, because there's going to be all kinds of people who don't want it to happen and all kinds of people who do want it to happen. And it'll be really important to see how it shakes out in the hindsight of history. So I think, that's kind of the ideal situation. If you find, yeah. But also, there are plenty of communities that are passionate about small things and will argue about it till the end of time. And whoever owns that NFT will be the beneficiary of it. So yeah, while controversy is generally rewarded, it's not infinitely so.
So let's maybe just talk a little bit about the settling, or how this could, let's say this is just another part of the funnel, and if it gets narrowed down, what that could look like, and then maybe try to conclude, because we're at about an hour. So I love the idea of, like, there's a lot of debate about something, it's not clear cut who's right. At that point, then it might make sense to do an independent study. But you want people who don't have too much skin in the game one direction or the other, or at least the reputation loss that they would get from faking results would be much higher than what they could gain from fudging the numbers in one experiment. I think that sort of new institution is going to be crucial to going from just having a lot of opinions and collecting all this data and at least seeing some of the more contentious topics, to actually trying to make truth out of all of it. So again, like the funnel, maybe if the Cure DAO is at the top, and then it gets narrowed down from there to Ideamarket, and then from there, uh, having some sort of prediction market of, like, the outcome of this experiment will be affirmative or it will be negative, and people will think, then that would have some sort of termination where at the end of the experiment, there's actually resolution, and that could then also reflect backwards on the people who posted them on Ideamarket, so they would get their confirmation that they were right, and that would increase their reputation. But there's even potential ways of then, creating something like Vita DAO, where we're gonna commercialize this research question, if it's apt to commercialization. Still, the incentives for how to actually get enough traction to fund, or I guess incentivize, independent research groups to take these questions on, I think is still open, but I could see that happening. And Mike, do you have any thoughts about how to Mike's in, to how to win, right, in this situation? How do you get to a conclusion?
So you need, I guess you need an oracle, and I don't. I need to think about that a little bit harder. But yeah, I think it would be super valuable if there are, like, agreed upon facts in the universe, and then we could like weight people's opinions based upon their agreed upon facts. It's easy with markets. So, like, yeah, what I don't see very often, which I would think would happen more, is like in DAO, like investment DAOs like Vita DAO, is them like weighting people's vote, like DAO members' investment decisions based upon their previous success in investing. You could either get it from like their actual real world long term, or in the short term, and eventually it will have longer blockchain histories. But you can just like scan anybody's public address and see how good they were previously in their trades, if that's what their motivation was, and then weight their investment decision, in their influence on the investment decision based on that. But it's kind of harder with science, I guess, because there's no like a clear on-chain winner or loser. I think maybe somebody who like knows a lot more about oracles and stuff like that has figured out a way to somehow bridge the facts of the real world to the blockchain, but I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, every fact has a trusted source behind it. It seems like I'm not obviously objective reality is there, but if you're still deciding what uncertainties are safe to ignore, or trusting someone to make that decision for you.
Right. Or we can just ask the Cartesian demon what the what reality is, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll tell us.
Right. So
Okay.
yeah,
maybe we
I want to say
sharing links.
just I wanted to underscore that I loved your funnel visualization. I think you like kind of described exactly how I see it too. That Ideamarket could fill this space between the collection and synthesis of data and institutional support, either by financially or with grants or patents or things like that.
Cool. Let's maybe just share some links with our screens for people who are interested, so that they can see. I can put my QR code up if you can make my screen the biggest on yours, Mike, since you're recording. Yeah. And then oh, is that going to be too blurry? Shit.
It's
Too much
bright.
light.
Maybe you can turn the brightness.
Yeah, let me try that.
It's
But I was going to offer, because I know a lot of people. There we go. If
nice.
follow me on Telegram, message me on Telegram, and I will hook you up with some of this Arbitrum ETH so that you can get started playing. Because I'm going to make a purchase of some, and it's kind of an ordeal if you're not familiar with crypto. So
actually, let me make it easy, because you can add Arbitrum. Yeah, I guess if you're not familiar with crypto, I guess it is an ordeal. But the easiest way to add Arbitrum to your MetaMask is go to chainlist.org and then scroll down to Arbitrum 1 and connect wallet. And then after you've done that, this button will change and say something else. It'll say add to MetaMask, and then you do that. So it just takes two confirmations of transactions that have no gas fee involved, and then you'll have Arbitrum in your MetaMask wallet, and you can use Ideamarket.
yeah, so that's Ideamarket.io, right?
Yep, Ideamarket.io is my product, and then Chainlist is the easy way to add Arbitrum to your existing MetaMask.
And then Mike's in is the best entry point for your project PureDAO.org?
Yep.
Or okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, I'll leave it to you guys to talk about integrations offline for the sake of our viewers. But this is, I feel like, a very productive conversation, and I hope we can build this funnel to truth together.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And a decentralized FDA. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tristan.
Everyone can decide who their own FDA ought to consist of, and then in hindsight, we'll have a competitive. We'll see whose FDA did the best, and then keep.
Yeah. I think that's going to start another hour of conversation.
To be continued.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.